Okay, we're going to stop there, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Catherine Lavoie has a master's degree in American Studies from the University of Maryland, where the focus of her studies was material culture and historic preservation. She worked for Maryland Historical Trust and the Montgomery County, Maryland Historic Preservation Commission before joining HABS. She was senior historian from 1994, becoming chief of the program in 2006. Catherine has served as historian and as project manager for dozens of HABS recording efforts. Among her more in-depth HABS studies was an architectural survey of Prince George's County, Maryland, that resulted in the publication of Landmarks of Prince George's County, and the study of the Quaker meeting houses of the Delaware Valley that won the Vernacular Architecture Forum's Buchanan Award for excellence in fieldwork, interpretation, and public service in 2003. Catherine is currently working on the Maryland volume of the Society of Architectural Historians Buildings of the United States series. All right, Catherine,
Great.
take it away.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
I can.
Okay, that's great. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to start by talking about why HABS is significant. Oh, my screen is not advancing now. Sorry about that. Here we go. Sorry about that. So HABS was initiated as a New Deal make-work program in 1933. So as such, it was the very first federal historic preservation program. So it sort of laid the groundwork for a lot of the programs that followed, creating initiatives that are now standard practice within the preservation movement, such as the idea of going out and surveying, looking for important buildings, creating a listing of those buildings, and then documenting them for the public benefit. The quote-unquote listing, this is 30 years before the National Register, were these cards that you see at the top. So our district officers who went out in the field scouring the states looking for buildings created these cards. At the end of the first couple of years, we had 7,000 cards identified for historic structures. HABS was also unique in that it was comprehensive. So during the 30s, there was a lot of work among local architects doing folio volumes of drawings of important buildings within their state or region. But some had photographs, but very few had historical data. We don't even know why they chose those buildings. So this idea that you would use history, drawings, and photographs together to tell a comprehensive story was unique, and that was one of the important groundbreaking HABS. And I think this is actually one of the reasons why HABS has maintained itself through so many political administrations and various trends, is this idea of creating a complete resume of the builder's art. And by that we mean it's not just about high-style architect design buildings, it's about the vernacular and the utilitarian as well. And we also try to get a huge range from every region of the country, and including very ethnic derived buildings like these Native American pueblos and the Spanish mission. So we've always felt that it was important to tell all American stories. And of course, the fact that our collection is available online through the Library of Congress, state-of-the-art preservation, and made available online and copyright free. So hopefully you've been to our collection. I encourage you to do so. You can query by region and building type, and download any of those records. They appear in scholarly journals and publications all the time. So there's a lot of reasons for the creation of HABS. It was sort of a perfect storm of a lot of different events in the fledgling preservation movement. But I really feel it was more of a call to action than anything else. This notion that we were losing our colonial past and that we had to do something if we wanted to save that. It was recognized by the AIA, the Library of Congress, the Park Service. And this is just one example. You see on the left this Tidewater style Maryland building that's starting already to sort of sag. We revisited it in the 1990s with only those brick end walls left standing. So that sort of speaks to the reason why we want to preserve on paper these buildings before they're lost. HABS was also viewed as a database of architectural elements. So you have a lot of early preservation movements like Colonial Williamsburg, for example, and that's exactly what those architects were doing. They were going out in the field, measuring and drawing up 18th century buildings so that they could inform their restoration efforts. So HABS was viewed as a way of doing that, but they're also designing new colonial revival style buildings. So you could find any number of period motifs by searching the HABS records. One of the big uses today really is the what we call baseline documentation that can be used for maintenance, rehabilitation, and interpretation. So these are some images from Ellis Island where we've been working for a number of years now to try to document all those endangered buildings that are not publicly accessible. So I mentioned that we were a make work program. We were only supposed to last a couple of months, but there was so much enthusiasm swirling around the program that in 1934, they signed a tripartite agreement, which is a really unique public-private partnership that spans two branches of government. So the Park Service maintains HABS, employs the people, and we administer it. The AIA, American Institute of Architects, still provides guidance and advocacy through the lens of private sector practice. And of course, the Library of Congress maintains the collection. And then in 1969, HABS was joined by the Historic American Engineering Record, or HAER for short, and with 5 different engineering societies signing into that tripartite agreement. What's really unique about HAER, if you look to your left, you can see the drawing. It's a drawing of an electrical power plant. So they do a lot of these process drawings that help make these very complicated industrial processes understandable to the layperson. They also document a lot of other types of engineering structures like covered bridges. We did a major study of covered bridges nationwide. We've done rocket test stands and other buildings for NASA. And we also have a very vibrant maritime program documenting historic ships. Likewise, in 2000, the Historic American Landscape Survey was created with the American Society of Landscape Architects as the third-party signatory on that. It was, again, in recognition that we have a very specialized resource and that we need to bring different tools and different methods to that. So HALS documents everything from design landscapes. You see on your left, that's a American World War I cemetery in Belgium, actually. And then more organic things like the sacred Hawaiian heiau that you see at the top there. So our mission, in short, first of all, is to create that archive of documentation. So we're always documenting things to feed the collection. We're also the clearinghouse for any documentation, whether it's done through Section 106 mitigation or donated by student groups. It all comes through our office to make sure that it's in compliance with our standards before it's sent to the library. And then we educate the next generation of recorders and preservationists. So for over 60 years now, we've run student teams where it's a paid position and you work with our staff to document historic buildings. We also have a couple of drawing prizes. If you're interested, you can look at our website to encourage student participation. We also are the federal agency tasked with creating the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines and our own guidelines for uniform development of documentation. Likewise, we create standard setting documentation. So as you can see at the top, this is one of our latest efforts. We worked with the Historic Vehicle Association. We're documenting some of the most important cars in America. This is the first car to win the Indy 500 in 1911, but we work with them to try to develop a prototype of what a drawing of a car should look like. And with regard to standards, I wanted just to point out that we have a special guideline to field documentation. This is geared towards students in particular, so you don't have to have an architecture degree. We recognize a lot of the students doing drawings are preservationists. So it's a very basic how-to measure a building, but it also talks about how to learn to read a building. And then, of course, field testing new recording methods and technologies. We try to stay current, always looking at whatever new technologies are coming out. We still depend a lot on hand measuring and field noting. particularly in the context of our student training. We feel that it is very, very important to actually engage with the building. And I think that's really best done when you're actually out there with a tape measure, taking measurements, or if you're an historian writing a description. It's only when you have that real one-on-one that you notice elements that speak to style or changes in the building over time or things of that nature. But of course we pretty much take a laser scanner to every project that we do. It's particularly important with buildings like, here's that Hawaiian heiau again. I mean, it's the size of a football field, and we documented the Statue of Liberty. So it's good to have the laser scan. Laser scanning is extremely accurate. However, it also has its pitfalls. As you can see from the scan of the Statue of Liberty, it cannot read what it cannot reach. So things that are obscured, whether it's just through, you know, the viewpoint or foliage, whatever, it can't capture. And it's also very pixelated. So you need various tools. So when it comes to details, we usually use just an old-fashioned molding a profile comb. That's still the best way. But when you're dealing with very ornate details like these column capitals or sculptures of that nature, we usually tend to use photogrammetry, create 3D models that can then be transferred into that 2D drawing that you see here. But the other important thing is I mentioned the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. So all of our field testing and determining what skills to bring to our documentation projects have to be considered within the context of the Secretary of the Interior standards. So most importantly are reliable sources. So that means the drawings must have field notes that people can go back and check to make sure it's accurate. For the historical reports, that's footnotes and bibliographies. And right now for photography, that is the negative. So we are working towards digital standards to use digital photography, but frankly, there is no great success story in terms of the long-term preservation of digital. So we are working towards that, but we're taking our time. So because of the Secretary's standards, we do sort of push back a little on the digital preservation, what they call in the industry, the sort of scan and can, because we don't feel that laser scans alone are enough. First of all, you need a specialized software and equipment to use it, so it's very expensive. You need a certain skill set. And you're not going to give a laser scan to your contractor to do a restoration project. So our audience is the general public. So you can read a lot more about the pros and cons of laser scanning. This is on our website. So this is our workflow. We use the laser scan, we use the photogrammetry, and that is all migrated into the computer-aided draft software to produce the end product, which is always the archivally stable measured drawing. But as a sort of a byproduct of all that digital documentation, we're able to do virtual tours and fly through videos, which have become very popular now. So you can visit those World War I cemeteries, an American Soil Abroad, or tour that part of Ellis Island that no one else can get to, or check out the space shuttle, or take the Sitka totem pole trail here. And we also do a lot of GIS-based story maps. So they're great education and sort of interactive tools that people enjoy, and it's embedded with our documentation. So you can find all that on our website. Please visit us. You can see some of the projects we're working on now, or look at any one of those virtual tours. Follow us on Facebook. So please reach out if you have any questions. And that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any questions there. I guess the one though that I have is ADA compliance, and how can people with various limitations or disabilities view or see or work with your material?
Right. Well, you know, we are working for the for compliance for all our web-based things, but in terms of what's available on the website, I mean, that's really the Library of Congress website. That's really up to the library to share. So I'm not really sure that there is a whole lot. That's a good question, though. I'll have to ask them what they're doing towards that. I mean, we have over 44,000 buildings documentation in the site, and the site gets approximately 50,000 visitors a month. So it probably would be good to do that.
A question from Jade. Are the documented sites selected by folks in the office, your office, or do you accept nominations like the National Register? I mean,
Right.
how do you submit? One, is all the work done, I guess, by your team, or how do outsiders contribute to HABS Hair House?
Right. Well, so we accept donations. Anyone who wants to do any kind of documentation, and it doesn't have to be comprehensive to be in the collection. You could actually just write a historical report. You could do drawings, and that would be accepted in the collection as long as it meets our standards. We're happy to provide review. I mentioned the student competitions, so we have drawing competitions, but the HALS program actually has what they call the HALS Challenge, which is just for a short form report to which you can attach digital photos as figure pages. So it's really easy to contribute to the collection in that manner. The projects usually are selected by, unfortunately, we don't have the funding on some to do what we want all the time. So a lot of the projects we select is based on need and available funding. Though we try to do our own discretionary projects whenever we do have extra funds, what I like to call the worthy and not just the wealthy, to make sure that we are still getting a broad range of building types. And a lot of that actually does come through the student competitions, because the students are selecting the buildings that are important to them in their own communities and then drawing those up. So it's really wonderful to have that element of student participation.
A question from Brianna. Sometimes students don't get a lot of hands-on practice. Do you have any suggestions on how to develop skills in documentation, presumably outside of the classroom or maybe in addition to it? Do you have any suggestions on what people can, especially students, can do to really hone some of those skills?
Exactly. It can be hard. I know that a lot of the professors who work with us, who participate regularly in the Peterson Prize, talk about the challenges. It's particularly hard in field work to get everybody out in the field at the same time when you have classes and whatnot. So a lot of the students who do that have to, spend time on their weekends or whatnot. But you can encourage your professors to get in touch with us, because we'll come lecture, we'll review drawings, we'll do whatever we can to support a program if a professor is willing to do that. But I would also encourage you to look at that student guideline, because you could probably yourself follow that, because it is very basic, and create your sketches and begin to teach yourself to do some basic measuring.
From Brendan, are there HABS internships?
Yes, absolutely. We do. It's our summer recording program, and we now work through NCPE to do our hiring. So check us out. This unfortunately is the first year in 62 years that we have not had interns because of the COVID situation. We were not able to get students actually into the field to sites, but hopefully we'll be back in swing next year. So you can check our website. We usually try to get our hiring material out around the holidays. So look for it on our website.
And if you're going to be participating again with NCPE next summer, that will be on our website as well. NCPE,
exactly.
The PreserveNet website. All right. I think we're going to move on to